born and raised in a little bitty town called Napoleonville, Louisiana, named after Bonaparte, obviously very French. And both my parents spoke French before they spoke English. Even though my dad carried an English name, Cox, my mama was Bro, B-R-E-A-U-X. And so three of my four grandparents either came from French Canada or from Provence, Avignon in France. And so this little town probably had, I don't know, 1,500 people. Today it's probably got 900, you know, young people left. And I was the oldest of four boys. My dad was a surgeon. My mom was his operating room nurse. And the only reason he lived in that town was that was my mother's hometown. And she told him that's where she was going to live. He could go anywhere he wanted. And so he wanted all of his sons to be medical doctors. And I was the oldest. So he knew right away I wasn't going to be a doctor because I was breaking my hands in fist fights and everything. And he said I was running my surgeon's hands, like I didn't want to be a surgeon. I went to college and kind of first microbiology course I took, I was kind of fascinated with the microscope. Working on my bachelor's degree, there was a microbiology professor that had a big influence on me. He was this grandma type that insisted you did everything this way and no other way would work, and I hated him too. But you know, I got into my lab and I found myself doing all those little things. And it's kind of funny, you know, when you're a kid and you're going through school, the professors that you probably think you dislike the most are the ones that you're probably going to love the most when it's all said and done, because they forced you to put your nose to the grind and to do things you, at the time, didn't think was what you needed to do. So I had, you know, 2 or 3 college professors and my father. That was an influence in my life. After my bachelor's degree, I was offered a job in Arizona inoculating rabbits to make vaccines and so forth. And I don't know, the going rate was about $6,000 a year, and I almost took that job. I'm glad I didn't. But I had a wife and a kid already, and so somebody said, you know, that food science department over there has a big grant to do microbiology on crawfish, and if you're in Louisiana and you work on the microbiology of crawfish, you're a hero. So I went over there, and the professor found out I knew all those old crawfishermen down in my neck of the woods, and I had a degree in bacteriology, so he put me on payroll. And he was a real young-looking professor, a little redhead guy, didn't look like he even shaved, and I looked older than him. And so we'd go out to collect crawfish, and these crawfishermen would tell him, boy, go get the professor some crawfish, and you know, talk to him like he was the student. And I thought, God, I'm never going to graduate. But anyway, after a master's degree on crawfish, I didn't know anything about chickens. But this professor of mine, I would have stayed there and worked under him for my PhD, but he left and went to Auburn. There was somebody in the poultry department that had a big old grant to work on salmonella in table eggs and leghorns and table eggs. And so I went to the poultry department, and they put me on payroll there working on my PhD, and that's how I got into poultry, just about through the back door, and I actually loved it. And I was at LSU for 11 years, summers and all, and my dad told people he was suffering from maltuition, but basically I was trying to stay out of Vietnam, and I had a wife by then and a second kid. So after I got my PhD, I figured I'd be teaching at a university. So I went to the library and I started in the A's, you know, University of Arkansas, Alabama, whatever, and went all the way to Zimbabwe, and I didn't have a job. I said, well, I don't want a job with the government. He said, well, they do research. Being just a kid, I took the job on the phone and loaded up my pregnant wife and 2 kids and a little white dog, and we came to Athens, Georgia, and I didn't even have a piece of paper saying I had that job. Imagine doing something like that. I mean, you know, if we're in the lab and we've got 3 or 4 people working in the, and you know, now I'm not in the lab anymore. I'm in the office writing and doing stuff while they're in the lab. And if there's a mistake made, we just scratch it and start over the next day. I mean, I'm not one of these, you know, temper, Mr. Bang kind of persons. I don't get angry at anybody. Anybody makes a mistake, it's an honest mistake. And the people working in my lab are hard-working, conscientious people, so it's a kind of a team effort. We'll have meetings, we'll talk about what we think needs to be done, but we welcome all of their input, so they're not fearful to offer their 2 cents. There's no such thing as a dumb question. Now, Will Rogers said it best. He said we're all idiots on different subjects, and he's right. We hunted and fished. I hunted ducks and doves and just about everything that walks and crawls, and we fished. And I was a guy who snapped for the punter. You know, what a terrible job that is. Your head's down there between your legs and you get pounded on. I was first baseman on the baseball team, and then I played basketball, and that was probably my best sport. And I'd score somewhere between 10 and 18, 19 points a night. I never played any defense, and I just shot. And the coach asked me one time, how come you don't play more defense? And I told him, you don't get your name in the paper playing defense. So, you know, every time I touched it, they couldn't run a play because when the ball got to me, it started toward the basket.